This is a transfer case from a 2010 Toyota 4Runner, also known as the FJT case. It's the manual, so part-time, two-wheel drive, four-wheel drive transfer case, and it's going to replace this one, which is our all-wheel drive, electric actuated transfer case from the 4th gen. This is the one that comes factory on the V8s. Our actuator's toast, so we do not even have 4-low, which is the main reason we're doing this. If we still had 4-low, we'd probably just leave it for now, but this is the way to go. This whole T-case is cheaper than half of just a new actuator, so we're making some holes and we're going to put this in. So step one was to cut a big old hole in our floor. There's really not a whole lot of information on putting this transfer case into these trucks other than good luck, have fun, it should work. So we're just kind of doing that. So we cut a hole. We're going to move the shift linkage on the new transfer case over because it comes up where the factory shifter is. So we're going to try and rotate it and not weld in any extra material, just rotate it so it's coming off the side. I'll show you on the T-case. So right now it kind of comes straight up and a little over to the side, but we are gonna chop it and rotate it so it comes directly out this way, and hopefully that gives us enough to get in. If not, we're gonna add a little bit of material to move it over a little further, and then we should be good to go. But yeah, so that's next. I'm gonna cut this and tack it on coming over on this side. Oh yeah.
Let's put the camera start. Alright.
We have some new lights on the dash because our transfer case sensor, whatever's in there, four-wheel drive sensors aren't connected anymore, so center diff lock's flashing, 4-low's flashing, which is fine. We'll just pull the bulbs probably, or tape over them.
Oh, alright. Is that high, low?
I don't know, too high.
Too high? There you go.
I'll say this, the transfer case is different gearing.
Yeah, it looks way torquier. Okay, set, sure. Is that 4-low?
Yeah.
You can see a torque on the whole thing.
It picks up the front end like 3 inches.
Try it again.
This is in the truck. As you saw, we tested it a little bit. Kind of got it dialed in. Still working on placement a little bit. I mean, that's about as good as it's gonna get. Have a good bit of room. We'll probably boot this and make it look nice, but it honestly fits really well in this factory location, so really stoked on that. Still kind of messing with all of this and trying to get it to sit nice, but the shifter's in. I have it pushed over a little bit to give us a little more room on this, but so one of the main problems you're going to run into putting this FJ Cruiser transfer case into your 4th gen 4Runner is you got to cut a hole in the floor. Obviously that's pretty easy though. Get the stick in the truck, not a big problem. You can do a much nicer job doing like a patch and stuff underneath and doing a good boot and making sure everything's watertight. We didn't really worry about it because this truck doesn't even have windows or anything like that. There's holes in the floors all over the place just from the factory because drain holes, so that's not a big deal for us, but if this is like a daily driver truck, you might care about that kind of stuff. Next is the fact that this normally has a center differential, not really so much, I guess it's considered a transfer case, but it's also a differential, so it's designed for an all-wheel drive setup, whereas this T-case is not. So you're either going to be in 4-wheel drive, which is like your center diff with the diff lock in, or too high, which the whole T-case will still be spinning because the front drive line spins still because we don't have an ADD front diff. An ADD diff allows your front differential to disconnect from that drive shaft, so that when your fronts are spinning down the highway, you're not putting a bunch of wear and tear into your transfer case that it's not made for, because it doesn't unlock like a unlocking center differential does. So to fix that, you'd have to put a new front diff in from, I think it's a 2nd gen Tacoma. They have the ADD diff, so you can put that diff into these trucks, but you have to notch your oil pan or do custom motor mounts to make it fit. And then that brings us to drive shafts. The T-case does not sit in the exact same spot. Well, the outputs on the T-case are not in the same spot as they are on the original case. So on this case, this is your input that goes into the transmission. So that means that this is your front output. So this one on here is actually, on the new case, sits about here. So it's about 2 inches further back. It sits about here. It's about 2 inches further forward. So that front drive shaft still works because there's a slip yoke in it, but you have to install the drive shaft as you install the T-case, so it's not ideal. So eventually we're going to get that front drive shaft rebuilt so that we can still remove it without pulling the transfer case. And then the rear actually sits further forward. So the T-case on this one, the new one, your output sits about here. So that drive shaft has to come out about 3 inches to bolt back on. So let me crawl into the truck and show you the drive shaft. Into the truck now. I got my flashlight here on the drive shaft. As you can see, the drive shaft is pulled out quite a bit on the slip yoke. So it does bolt up, it does work, but we're worried that as soon as we flex this drive shaft and that rear axle, it's going to either pull this all the way out, or it's going to put unneeded stress on that joint because there's not a whole lot of contact inside that slip yoke. So what we're going to do is go ahead and get this rear drive shaft rebuilt this week before we go wheel this. But the front, as you can see, is fully compressed. It fits, but it's not perfect. You can't uninstall your drive shaft without uninstalling your transfer case. So not ideal at all, but it'll work for some wheeling, and the drive shaft will be fine as long as we don't break it. So yeah. Transfer case is in. We're pretty stoked to have that finished. Mostly we're going to get some gear oil and top it off. We're going to drain whatever crap is in there now out and just get some fresh gear oil in there. We're going to do 75W90 synthetic gear oil. It calls for, I think it's called like GLH3 or something, but the 75W90 will be fine. People run it in their daily driver trucks all the time and don't have any issues. So the next step is rebuilding this mess that happened on our last race. I already ordered a new brake line for this soft line here that goes from the axle hard line to the caliper. So I'm gonna go pick that up here in a little bit, and then we brighten this up a little bit. We're gonna cut all this out, fill this back in with weld, clean it all up, and then get our shock tower welded back in there. And we're also gonna do some gussets for those shock towers so that they can't break out like they did last time, even if we have shock issues. If we don't have shock issues, they would have held up just fine. I'm not worried about them, but since we were bottoming out that shock, it just put a bunch of stress on this, so we might as well take it as an opportunity to make this all stronger, because that's what you do: break, rebuild better, and make your car more competitive. So yeah, we're gonna get this thing ready for Moab here next weekend, and we're gonna keep cranking away. All right. Well, our all-wheel drive 4Runner is officially two-wheel drive. There's so much rubber there. And we have shit pulls up with concrete. And we have
Flip it. lot of torque.
Yeah.
Like barely on it.
Yeah. How
Rundown of what's going on.
We're either doing something incredibly stupid or worthwhile, which is welding our third member in the rear axle. We're replacing the rear axle at some point anyways, and this one's open, and we don't have A-track anymore, and we're trying to go wheel in Moab, so we figure a welded diff is better than an open diff. So yeah, we're gonna weld it up.
You're on fire! The cardboard!
Northern Colorado driveline, buttoned up a badass drive shaft for us. Looks great.
Definitely all locked up.